All right, you're now tuned into the Rotated Views podcast, episode number 18, Knowledge is Power. I am your host, Jimmylee Velez. I am here with Gabe, Heck, and Manny. In this episode, Knowledge is Power, we discuss my experience with personal development, the power of applied knowledge, educating our children, education during our upbringing, and the things we would love to be educated on. We wrap up this episode with quotes from Charles Spurgeon and Plato. All right, so the first segment we like to kick off is with a story. And if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. Just FYI, every Tuesday morning we have a brand new episode for your listening pleasure. And we kind of aim towards personal development, but we are under the category society and culture. So we kind of talk about a little bit of everything, just the views from the selected guys here. So that being said, we're going to jump right into it. The story this episode is a little bit different. It's my story about attaining and applying valuable knowledge. So, life before personal development, for me, I was a jokester, a little bit confused, angry, and extremely immature. And we're going back to, I would say, high school days and early college days. What it was, I just think it was just a lot of energy, and that was how I exerted my energy. That was just my surroundings. I grew up with a family that was constantly joking, constantly, cutting up, busting chops, and there's nothing wrong with that aspect, but my immaturity took over, and it went beyond that. So then just, you're hurting people's feelings and whatever. So that was the immature kind of confusion. I didn't know what direction I was moving in. And I was honestly a pessimistic person, naturally pessimistic. So pessimist, you're kind of veering your thoughts towards negative stuff. Like when you see an episode of something, or you see a story, or you're watching a video, you're constantly pointing out all the negative stuff instead of looking for the positive. That was basically me. Then in 2006, it was going into my senior year at Temple University there in Philadelphia, I was introduced to the personal development industry. I was, like I said, wrapping up my 4-year program of health information management. It was a high stress, study format. The platform was, your 18 credits a semester, which a lot of people take, 12 to 13 is average. Someone who puts on a load is like 15, 18 is kind of, is pretty tough. So all my, school goers, you know what that full time is like. I had a social life, and we did extracurricular activities. We had flag football. We did, fun stuff. So there was a lot going on. So with the personal development industry, when it was introduced to me, taught me, first of all, how to think differently. So it changed my thinking. And so I went from being super pessimistic to being extremely optimistic and trying to extract all the positive, good things that life actually has to offer. And it came at the most perfect time for me, because it allowed me to manage all these moving parts to my life in a positive manner. So I became, quote unquote, mature to my approach for life, and it changed everything for me. There was mind growth. I learned to listen, be patient, set proper goals. I got humbled, gained wisdom and understanding. Like I said before, it completely changed my life for the better. Much more happier, excited, appreciative to people, grateful for what I had, accountability. I was challenged, and a bigger picture about serving and helping others, where before my life basically was just revolved around myself and, very selfish. The difference between learning all this stuff was I applied what I learned, and I gained experience, which obviously turns into wisdom. And that is actually what I wanted to talk about this entire thing, where people say knowledge is power. And I have a blog post probably for a couple years ago stating knowledge is not power. And that gained a lot of controversy because it was, taken in the wrong context, which kind of is what I wanted. The purpose of that was. And what that means is you can have all the knowledge in the world. If you don't apply the knowledge, it's useless. You have a bunch of information jammed up in your brain, and it's going nowhere. You're basically a library sitting there, and no one's renting out the books or any of the information. So when I say knowledge is not power, it's a fact. Applied knowledge is power. And at the end, it raised my level of awareness, and obviously I changed forever financially, educationally, physically, spiritually, and relationally. These 3 guys around me went through that growth with me, either went through it with me or saw that growth. Was there something? That's my story in a nutshell. I'm trying to not be long-winded here in that explanation. Obviously, there's a ton of detail that comes along with that, but was there anything that you guys wanted to add, knowing my story? You guys kind of went through it with me, through that change. I know, Manny, you saw firsthand how I was at Temple, how I was in high school, how it then was when we entered into Temple University, and how I ended my career and then started real adulthood. And Gabe was actually the one who introduced me to the personal development industry, and then so he saw me from that point.
Starting point of that.
That starting point. And then Heck obviously saw me since I was a child.
The maturation process was it went through levels. When you first were introduced to the personal development, it was like you went in deep. So you have like an addictive personality.
Yeah.
Like when you crossed over, let's just call it, you crossed completely over, like too positive. It was almost like too much. So to watch the whole evolution of it, to like watch you read all these books and kind of work on yourself through the years, you found a nice, I guess, a pace or a nice even ground that worked for you. Right. Because in the beginning, it was like, you were a pessimist.
Yeah.
And then you went from a pessimist to just being the most optimistic person in the world. And at first, it was like, geez, Christmas. Like, all right, here we go. And everything was super positive. So it's a good change, but almost shocking change. But over the years, you kind of pick and choose, and you kind of mold yourself to what you want to be. And I think you finally, after a couple years, you found a nice balance. So that's what I took from living with you and going through, high school all the way through to kind of graduating and then seeing the maturation process. That was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fun. That's a really good point, actually. When you're saying I went too optimistic, I think I wanted to change so bad that I was just like, I'm willing to do anything. To be honest with you, it started off, I want to learn how to handle stress. And that's all in the whole self-help thing, because I was under a lot of stress. And, first of all, I had, in a year from now, I was thinking, I'm going to be on my own. I have to get, a job that has to be in this career, because I don't want to waste this college degree. Mm-hmm. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I think for me to properly handle my own mentality at that moment, I needed to, go overboard with the education, overboard with the and like you said, it came out kind of goofy and funny at first, because it was. But I think, honestly, that's what I had to do to kind of recondition myself.
That's the only, if you really want to make change, you had to just immerse yourself in it, because just putting a toe in and kind of testing the waters wasn't going to facilitate the type of change you were looking for. You had to jump in completely, immerse yourself in it, and then allow the process to be the process. So
absolutely. So I went from it was a huge, what's that called? Volatility. It went from down here to skyrocket through the roof.
Sure.
But like you said, it kind of bounced right there in the middle, where now I'm to the point where when I see someone who's overly optimistic, to be honest with you, I feel like they're missing out on portions of life as well. And that's what I learned. When I see someone who's super pessimistic, the same way. Mm-hmm. I feel like we have to be in between. And here's why I say that. When you're super pessimistic, you're missing out on some dude, I get the chills saying it. You're missing out on beautiful moments you would never know that's there. This is the reason why I say knowledge is power, applied knowledge is power, is because when you do study that, when you do understand that, it raises your level of awareness. And when you're aware that something's actually happening, it's like some people they're not aware that they're rude, right? Yeah. And they're just continually being rude. Right. But once you start, let's say, you're being videotaped and someone shows you a video of yourself being rude, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's that change should happen. That's knowledge. Now, if you apply that for the next time you're dealing with somebody and you're not rude, that's wisdom. And when that's applied, your awareness is through the roof for that specific situation. Right? If you're overly optimistic, you lose touch with certain feelings that are necessary for you to live a real life. For example, like, someone passes away, or someone's, hurt. Or, okay, let's just say like a buddy of yours gets his feelings hurt or something like that. He breaks up with his significant other or whatever. And then you're in his face like, oh, everything works out, dude. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. We get to hang out more. And yes, you're trying to be a helpful person or a helpful friend at that moment. But that's not what he needed. He needed to be like, dude, if you need something, let's talk. Let's get your mind off stuff. Like, if that's what you want to do. It kind of...
Yeah, because if you're like in that negative aspect and somebody's on the the opposite extreme of it, that's not helping, because like you feel like you can't go to that point where it's like it doesn't make sense to be super positive like Manny. So you have to have that balance of somewhere between, like you said, just be there and like accept that things are gonna get better, but yeah, you can't go from super down to super happy, because it doesn't make sense, because that's not how actual life is. Like you said, you're gonna miss out on that because that's not real life.
And what that exaggerated stuff that happened, it was me slowly taking out the toxic things that were in my life. And so when you're not in tune with the toxic stuff, you're just like, you're constantly smiling. You can only hold that on. You can only hold that for such a while. And life is going to knock you to your knees.
Sure.
So I'm not knocking super optimistic people. I just feel like it's something to consider, because like Manny just said, he brought that up. I didn't. I was on one whole other level. And I definitely missed a couple things where I could have, maybe been a better friend or more understanding. Or sometimes people just need to be heard.
Right.
And, sometimes I was just like, oh, you got to work through this. In my mind, I thought I was helping.
Sure.
It was an innocent thing. It wasn't like I was purposely, just shoving positive stuff in people's faces.
Right.
But yeah, and then so for me, I was Gabe says this all the time. He said, we learned in that personal development business, you literally applied.
Yeah.
Because we know that they call it a constipation of the brain.
Yeah.
Where we know people who know so much stuff and they just want to say it, they just want to get it out, but they don't know how to formulate. It's because they never released it. And when you release it, that's an application. That's a form of application of what you're learning. That's why they say teachers are learning more than they're teaching the students, because when they're actually explaining and breaking things down. You ever explain something to your kid or something, or to someone, and it's almost like in the back of your mind, like that kind of like makes even more sense in my head now. You ever do that?
Yeah. You almost halfway explain it to yourself.
Yeah, at the same time, you're like, that is how it operates or whatever. So I guess my story is more based off of conditioning, which we all go through. It's just a conditioning that's in our minds. The conditioning leads to the way we think. The way we think, turns into actions, and then those actions turn into results. And then that's what you get. That's who you are. So it was just, I had to rewire my brain to think a certain way. And if anybody knows the book by Wallace D. Wattles, it was the book that's behind the movie The Secret, which ironically also came out in 2006. So when I was making all these changes, that movie just came out. The Secret just came out. The personal, this is all 2006. So I mean, it was like a world shift for me. It was a mind shift, and it was something that I like to go back on and remember to humble myself, because then the more you study, you realize the more you don't know anything. There was one time where I was so involved with reading the next book, I went to Barnes and Noble and stood right in front of, it was like a finance business section on the second floor by the one by Oxford Valley Mall. And I sat there and just like, my eyes welted, because I realized, wow, you know nothing. Look how much knowledge there is right here with all these wealthy individuals trying to explain stuff, and all you have to do is pick it up and read it. And you're not. And I just stood there and like, there's so much to know. There's so much information out there that we can all raise our levels of awareness. This has nothing to do with money. You can go to the library and get a book for free. Right. It's just, how bad do you want to change? And that was it for me. So also, like I like to do is to define a couple things for clarity. So I get some words from dictionary.com, and this week I wanted to define power and knowledge. So they define knowledge as acquaintance with facts, truths, or principles, as from study or investigation, general erudition. Totally probably mispronounced that, but definition of power. ability to do or act, capability of doing or accomplishing something, the possession of control or command over others, authority, ascendancy. What a nice word that is. All right, so in our second segment, I want to jump in and ask you guys, what does knowledge or education mean to you or do for you? And what does ignorance mean to you?
I want to say knowledge is kind of like what you the whole point of like your whole story was like it's bettering yourself. I mean, the more, you know, and the more you apply what you know it obviously makes you a better person. Or even like certain things like situations, like I think some things you have is experience, like your experience of going through that too kind of helps shape and kind of helps focus on like what you actually want to do. Because like you said, like the results you get from trying to apply the stuff you learn, it may not necessarily be always positive results, and that's why you can't always be super optimistic about everything, because, you know, like I said, negative is part of life, and you can't always have, you know, it's not always 100% positive, it's always not 100% negative, but like you have to have that balance. And as long as you keep applying and doing, you know, you're doing better for yourself, I mean, it's gonna work out anyway in some form or another.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're night and day, right? So ignorance and knowledge are, to me, are opposites, and it's like good or bad. You don't know one without the other, right? Yes. We don't know what it's like to successfully pass a class, let's just say, if the opposite end is failing the class, right?
Yeah.
Or why does it feel so good when there's a positive result, like Manny, winning a softball game? Why does that feel so good? Because you've tasted defeat. You don't want to, you have something to contrast it from. So when I see it that way, you need both, actually.
And yeah, sometimes ignorance can be also too like the lack of like wanting to learn or wanting to like do better for yourself. Because like even like I was actually, what made me think of like ignorance is like kind of like what you said last week or actually it's the known thing of like when you say you don't talk about politics and religion and stuff like that. It's that usually a lot of that stuff comes with like almost like an air of ignorance, when generally because you get into like arguments and stuff like that because you don't understand or you're not willing to learn the opposite end of the conversation.
Right.
So you're so dead set on defending yourself that you're not willing to understand or even delve deep into like the opposite stance of what you're trying to take, that you don't really fully understand it, but you become hard-headed in terms of like what you think you know.
So it's like a deeper understanding versus a shallow understanding.
Exactly.
Just something that's super surface. It's just there, and it's like it's kind of like when they talk about politics, and you talk about someone who says I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or I'm a liberal, whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes these people have these conversations just based off their party and not trying to even take in what other parties are even having to say, just because they decided this is who they are.
Exactly.
And so that is a form of ignorance, because otherwise it's still okay to be whatever you want. It's just you also can be knowledgeable in these other parties or other segments of life. That was just an example, but
yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. That's what it was. It's understanding different aspects, even stuff that you may not fully understand, which is why you start researching, why you do stuff that like you were talking about today, like trading and stuff like that. You didn't fully understand that, but you're doing research. You're doing stuff like kind of doing baby steps into that aspect of it to kind of try it out and see what it's all about. Then you understand, you have a better understanding of what it is, and you can actually start applying that in bigger aspects and in the bigger realms where you can apply it in a much larger scale.
It's amazing to me because it's wakening worlds that you never knew existed, right? It was like he's talking about like stock trading or whatever. I heard of stock trading before. I knew stock trading. I've done stock trading before, right? But when I started diving into reading books and actually studying what this stuff was, I was telling these guys there's social sites just for stock trading, right? And these guys are kind of like forums almost, but it's like a little app. It's almost like a Facebook for stock trading, and these guys are giving each other tips and advice and whatever. These two guys and me probably 4 months ago never knew that existed. But when I started to dig in and study gaining knowledge of something, I became aware of a whole nother world that I literally never knew existed, and it was happening within my fingertips. And we all have access to this free app to gain knowledge of, people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And that's just another example of worlds literally opening up when you actually want to receive knowledge and you're ready to raise your level of awareness. Otherwise, if I never studied that and I'm like, okay, yeah, somebody's making money doing that, I'm not interested. That doesn't mean nothing else is happening. There's people making a ton of money off this stuff because their awareness is there, and that's really what the law of attraction is.
Yeah.
Once again, it goes back to the core of wanting, kind of what Manny was saying earlier. You want it to change, right? It was a point where life hit me, and I was like, I can't handle this stress anymore. I need a natural way of dealing with this, of all this toxic stuff that's going around. And you see this quote everywhere: knowledge is power. You see, know thyself. This is all the same stuff. It's understanding who we are, why we're here, what the point of all this is. Because if you don't know that, you are a zombie. You're literally dead walking around. I think it was Ben Franklin or somebody. I'm totally apologize for forgetting who said this, but they said, it's a shame that men live till 65 years old, but they die at 25. I think it was I want to say Ben Franklin for some reason. But anyway, his point was they stopped growing. At the age of 25, you stop growing. At 25 is like some statistic that was also followed up by this quote that people just get into their everyday routine. Yeah. For the next 40 years, they're literally doing the same thing. Work for the same company, work for the same people they don't like, to the job that they don't like, right? To hang around with the people they don't like, but they're doing nothing to change.
Yeah. And you hear people like, "Oh, I'm stuck in my ways." So it's like they're not willing to change.
Ignorance.
Yeah, that's complete ignorance.
That's
stuck in your ways.
Perfect definition.
You have complete control over that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so ignorant for someone to say, "I'm stuck in my ways." Yeah, but there's always that learning curve where you have to learn. It's like we were talking about earlier today, technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have people. We update people with their, with the operating system, Windows 7. People, we had XP for a while. XP is so obsolete, and people are complaining, oh, well, Windows 7, I don't know how to do this. What do you mean? It's almost simultaneous. It's like similar to XP. Just, you got to learn. You just got to learn it.
The slight differences that is.
Yeah, exactly. The slight difference of it. It's not that you're stuck in your ways. If you learn it, you're not going to be stuck. You're just not willing to learn it, or you don't want to learn it.
The other part of it is too, people are scared of change.
Yeah. That's it. Exactly.
It's the comfort.
Yeah.
It all goes back to being comfortable. So what's comfortable? Routines are comfortable.
Yes,
absolutely.
In the process of rewiring how you think, this is a quick tip. I read in one of the hundreds of books that I read. They said an easy way to just throw your mind off is when you're driving home or you're walking somewhere, go a different route.
Right.
Because it throws your routine off. So if you're going the same day or same direction, if you can anyway, some people can't, but if you can, even when you get by your house, you don't have to go to the fastest route. Just take another block and come back around. It throws your mind off, and while you're going through that change, think of new things. That's changing the neuroplasticity of your brain. It's the same when someone says, "I'm the same. I never change." When I hear stuff like that, all I think of is like, dude, that I kind of, in a weird way, I understand that you're saying like you're the same person from back in the day, but in the double-edged sword there is like, I hope you grew though. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
like, I think they mean like, I have my roots and I have my morals and I stick by them. I hope that's what you're saying when you say that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Hopefully not that you're literally the same person, because
30 years
some
ago.
people say they're the same person. They're literally the same person from high school. They have not changed. The way they think, the way they joke, everything is the same.
Even the way they dress sometimes.
The way they dress.
Just
they
stuck
still
in
got
that-
Jenko jeans. Everything.
Yeah, the best is the people that I see stuck in the 80s. Like, we're 2016. Let's change your wardrobe. Get rid of your classic Reebok high tops and loosen up a little bit. Get rid of the stonewash.
Exactly. Well, it's like the cool, like when I follow a lot of like gentlemen's whatever GQ stuff. All these guys are dressing up, kind of like looking like a gentleman out in public or whatever, and they give you tips and stuff on how to be well dressed or well groomed man. And I always love like the older man with like the beard is going with like the wave of like the new kids.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like, that's how you stay young. I love that. I was like, I hope I look like that when I'm 65. I hope I'm that energetic, because there's an application, there's an energy that has to go behind that to want to be that, to be that, right? And it's like you see this guy, like you want to hang out with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yep.
and then his counterparts are the people who are like his age, have beer bellies and just all sloppy and are retired. And that dude was 65 years old, model, literally just like living life how he designed it. Not just go. That was not routine, because when you're going with the new styles with everything, that's changed. That's constantly changing.
Constant change. And that's the thing. A lot of people will say, "Oh, look at him. He's 65, trying to look young." No, that's not trying to look young. He's trying to stay up to par with what's going on around him. He's not trying to look young or act young. He's just fitting in with what's going on.
He is young. That's a mental. That's a mentality.
Right, exactly.
He has a mentality. He's young at heart. What they say, he's young at heart. That's a mind thing. What we experience at life on an everyday basis happened internally first.
Right.
So you at one point decided, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. This is all I'm doing. I'm not changing. I'm not blah 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 blah. It's like Colonel Sanders from KFC, right? This whole thing exploded after the age of 65. I think it was 65. Yeah, it was like 65 years old. That's when KFC kicked off. And he had like hundreds of no's that people didn't like his chicken recipe or whatever. Till finally he got the yes, and it exploded to, what it is today. That chain is still a viable business in 2016.
Yep.
It's never too late to change. It's never too late. What it is getting out of your comfort zone and humbling yourself, right? It's understanding that you don't know everything, and always trying to, chime in or cut someone off, or just behave and present yourself as if the know-it-all. That in itself is levels of ignorance that is just like profound, actually. So I just, and this is something that I'm preaching, I'm talking to myself more than everybody. It's something that I have to remind myself every single day, because we're all challenged every single day. Every day there's something new that happens, whether we realize it or not, and it's challenging and it's triggering us, right? We all have the thing that ticks us off. We all have those quote unquote pet peeves, right? For me, it's like when someone doesn't put on their turn signal, it drives me up a wall. How am I supposed to know you're turning, bud? And then I'm riding your bumper. I don't even know what's going on right now. And then he's honking a horn. But then that to me is like, dude, you got to relax. It's not that serious. Relax. Let them go about their business. You just got worked up for no reason. That's something, it's little things that we all have to work on. But if I'm not aware, know thyself, I need to understand myself a little bit better. I know that ticks me off. Drive at more of a distance then. Don't let that bother you. Stop putting yourself in those positions then. Right? It's those kind of things where you have to learn for yourself. Yeah. It's like when you want to get in shape. I can't do your push-ups for you. At one point, you have to do it for yourself. I can feed you all the knowledge, but if you don't apply it, all these people have all these work-from-home diets and work-from-home workouts. You have the books, atañuque, what they say in Spanish, but if you don't apply what's there, you're not going to shed the weight. It's always going to be. You're not going to be healthy staring at all this knowledge. Which is going back to say why I say applied knowledge is power. It's super powerful when you apply that diet. It's super powerful when you apply that workout regimen. That's when it becomes powerful, not just sitting on your desk saying Monday, right? And just labeling it Monday.
Monday.
And you're stuffing your face with a cupcake saying Monday. Oh, Monday, it's all going down. You know what I mean? You have to be able to change now. The change has to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. See, so, like my whole thing, like at work when I'm learning something, I don't act like I know it. I may know it, but I always question it. And in order for me to understand it, I have to do it myself. Mm-hmm. If someone does it for me, I get completely lost because I can't follow the tracks. I can't follow the steps. So if they tell me how to get there or how to do it, then I understand it so much more. And I'll remember how to do it for next time.
Exactly. And sometimes even with stuff that too, if somebody shows you, sometimes it's, like you said, it's something that confuses you, whatever. Sometimes if you constantly do it yourself, then you get a better understanding.
Right, yeah,
and sometimes you may do it differently than you may find it easier to do it differently than how they did it, because to them that 10 steps might be easier for them as opposed to you find a shortcuts and all stuff that they totally don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. And there was quite a few times. I mean, someone was showing me something, and I was like, "Well, can't you go from here from the start menu and look at it that way?" Yeah, I guess you could. You could do it that way. So it was like, learning how to find shorter ways that work well for yourself, not necessarily the way they're showing you, but it's still getting the job done.
Right.
So again, like I said, I have to do things on my own and learn it that way. And I'll also like reiterate what they said. So if they're telling me how to do something, I'll repeat what they said just for confirmation and reassurance that I'm doing it the right way. Because especially installing software, if you set up the wrong string, it's not going to work the way it should. So
Right.
I always, for reassurance, I always make sure that I'm doing it the proper way and going to the right location for it.
Right. Yeah, and I think, man, you can attest to this. A lot of the stuff when we were talking about applying knowledge, or any person who graduated from college or who went through, schooling, it's the application of what you learned is when honestly most of it is learned. Really, is truly is the real education.
Yeah. Right.
Is these textbooks come to life when you're applying what you learn. For example, I remember it was when Manny first bought his house or whatever. They had to do some electrical work or something. I forget what it was. I mean, you could probably explain it, but you ended up buying a book on how to rewire sockets or whatever it was, and light switches or whatever.
Yeah.
And he went from not knowing how to do that, scared, or had to depend or pay on someone else or pay for someone else, to literally picking up a book, buying a book, whatever, reading it, and he was changing sockets and changing light switches within days. And that is a perfect example, alongside with furniture building. When he saw something on a magazine, or his wife saw something on a magazine, when this whole thing, with the skids and all that stuff came out, he wanted a picnic table or something. It was there, but then he had someone help him show him the way. Manny looked up a couple things, and from there, tailspinned a couple other projects that he learned and did on his own. I mean, you want to touch on that?
I mean, for me, the knowledge, when you're talking about that, is that situation with the electricity thing. Like, somebody is going to charge you X amount of dollars. So for me, just applying that knowledge or gaining a certain level of knowledge, you don't have to be a master at it. Right. But if you gain enough knowledge, you'll never be taken advantage of. And to me, that, like, educate yourself that. You don't ever want to if you ever go into a meeting and you haven't prepared, right, you're going to feel like, oh no, you're either going to be taken advantage of, or somebody's going to pull your cards in there, and you're going to feel like boo-boo the fool.
Yeah.
So for me, educate yourself enough just so people don't take advantage. So you don't have to go into the, deeper meanings, and you guys touched on a lot of deeper stuff. Just educate yourself enough and have enough knowledge to where you will not be taken advantage of. Like somebody going to the garage, getting your car fixed. Well, they can call it the flux capacitor underneath the engine. And, meanwhile, that's totally made up. But if you don't know, most people, So just, educate yourself enough just to have enough knowledge to don't get taken advantage of.
Or even what you're good at with negotiating, even at the table with car buying.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's like your expertise.
Sure. I mean, I enjoy that portion of it, but you go in and you know all the facts, you know what the rebates are, and everything that is, plays into your favor, and what's fair, what's not fair, what they can do and what they can't do. And then so when I go sit down, I am at total ease and comfort knowing that they're not going to take advantage of me. And then you can always play the game better when, you're comfortable.
And stuff like that too is like, especially like you said, like pulling like Manny, if you want to like negotiate, it's like if you have a group that you're like dealing with, you work to each other's strengths type stuff. Like
Absolutely.
you may understand certain aspects, but like me and Heck are like the IT people, so we understand more technology and stuff like that too.
Sure.
And so you may have like a basic understanding, but somebody else may have a deeper understanding. So it kind of helps along with that too.
And I think even then, like, don't ever get caught up in feeling you have to know everything, right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So if I have an IT question or just a general question on like putting speakers outside, I don't go and try to read a book, or I'm not going to go buy a book and say, hey, how do I learn to wire this?
Yeah.
I'll call one of my many contacts, Heck being the preferred one, and say, hey, how long to do this? Oh, it's 15 minutes. You need this, and the third. You've now saved yourself how much time, effort. So it's good to know a lot of things, but at the same time, take advantage of someone who has the knowledge and just using it for your own.
Cool. So, all right, with that, that's perfect. We'll move on to the next segment we call Dad Life. And the question is, what does education look like in your household? Why? And was education enforced in your house growing up?
Ha. Yeah. Yeah, of course. You're not going to end up like me. I don't want you in a factory. Obviously, there's a certain mindset from '70s into the '80s. Everybody
To
who
the
went to
90s.
school into the '90s, right? Anybody who went through high school had to go, and my house had to go to college because it wasn't going to be. You were going to be like me. You're going to have better. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely was driven into your brain.
I mean, Manny's mom, I was scared of Manny's mom.
yeah.
She was like, they had the the magnetic alphabets on the, the classic, all the different colors or whatever. Like, what's this one? A. What's this one? B. I mean, it was a drill. I mean, flashcards, everything. Yeah, and then it went from like...
It wasn't fun, man.
No, but it was good. We needed that.
Sure,
it was...
sure.
And it wasn't that the whole time I was there because she used to like babysit me or whatever. She'd just grab us for literally like 45 minutes, maybe to an hour, maybe half an hour. I don't remember what it was, but it was a segment of time that we had to sit down and study. Yeah. While everyone else is out running around doing whatever, me and Manny were studying for like an hour during the summer days. We got it in. Yeah. But at the time, I don't know if he did, I hated it.
No, absolutely.
I didn't understand
it.
Did. I didn't understand. I'm like, well, what's the point? I just want to play, I need a Ninja Turtles or something. But then after a while, like I would go back to school feeling like sharp still. Yeah. I didn't like my mind didn't die during the summer. Right. I was sharp, it was normal, like, just learning new things. It was adaptive. And, there's a whole child psychology thing behind that as well. We absorb everything at those young ages. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, for me, I'm not sure how, obviously, my son's only 2 years old. So I'm not there yet when it comes to like, when you get to high school, you're going to college. I don't know how I'm going to be. We have mixed things about that. Cause I'm very much so like whatever,
you want to do,
he wants to do, but then also I'm there to guide you as well. Cause sometimes kids make some dumb decisions. Right. The parent's job really, I feel like, is to help maintain, guide, and show, and kind of show cause and effect. Well, if you don't go here, this is what's going to happen. You understand that, right? But if some kid has like entrepreneurial ways and they're just going to be a business person and they're selling lollipops in high school and they're selling and it's like, this dude doesn't need the formal education, so to speak, and he's gonna make it happen. You just got to read the child. This is almost like looking at a super gifted athletic person. You want to cater to that strength. Yeah, so I'm not sure how we are, but in my opinion, I would like for him to go because of the benefit. I always say this, for the experience, the benefits that I got out of the experience, out of going to Temple University, the diversity that I was able to face, the adversity that I had to face, all the mental challenges on being your own and handling yourself and handling your finances and handling your emotions and handling living free for the first time, was still kind of in a bubble, which was a nice way to enter life, in my opinion. But so I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. Plus, obviously, it was a great education I feel like I received at Temple.
We're not putting it in a vacuum here and talking about education as just being book smart. I mean, you could. There's definitely different levels of education, different subjects, different. Just learning how to read a person. No, there's not a class in any university is going to teach you. That's something that you feel you go through a life experience, and that's how you learn it. So, I mean, education isn't necessarily, going to college and getting it there. You can educate yourself on a lot of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're talking about, that's crazy. That's the emotional quotient. That's what they call emotional intelligence. Yeah. I always say this all the time. It's like my EQ is way higher than my IQ. I feel like I can almost see people's face and write a word, what they're thinking or what's going on in their mind. I can read people very well, and that's something that same thing like what you're saying, I honed in on purposely. I wanted to know this stuff. And that's like that stuff's priceless. Which is good though too. I mean, for us at this moment, we're teaching James at this tender age as much as possible. They're literally sponges, and we're conditioning the child's brain with our thoughts, with our ideologies, with our the atmosphere and whatever we're bringing. This person is then going to become a product of this environment that we're raising him in. So we're trying to be very conscious of that. What I feel, and I hope what people do a lot of time is grab their experience of life from childhood, their partners, if they have one, experience, and kind of improve on that. And kind of build off that, kind of what we talked about before, standing on the shoulders of giants. maybe kind of fill the voids of like, oh man, I goofed there. I don't want him to goof there. I want to show him this.
You always want better for your children than
Exactly.
you always had. So.
That's what I'm saying. My hope
Yeah.
is that, you know, that's what you want. And like Manny's saying, education is not just, you know, school. The majority of how someone ends up is not because of school. It's
Right.
because of what was going on,
How
you know,
it's
at
shown.
home and how they were
Yeah.
raised and stuff
It's
like
the
that.
experience of it.
Right, exactly. I just think it's helped to, you know, kind of cater, you know, direct someone in a certain direction or whatever, but it's up to us. A perfect example is we read to him before we go to bed. When he's up, we limit the time that he's on the television. My wife is constantly, you know, trying to, you know, teach him new things with flashcards or, you know, the alphabets or counting. You know, now he knows his left and his right. Just silly stuff. He knows his birth date. He knows, and we're trying to like continually challenge him. That's just on those stuff. Then we want to have, you know, musical things to be, you know, introduced, and then this athletic stuff to be introduced to kind of build this, you know, individual that's hopefully well-rounded and, you know, like I said, a future person of the, you know, the United States. So
Right.
we're raising our future literally. So I mean, that's me. I read the children's Bible to James right before we go to bed, and then Kel goes off and we read multiple books, and then she goes off and reads like another children's book. But he knows my aspect is the Bible.
Yeah, see, in my house, I tried to do the, I'm a horrible teacher. So we're sitting down, I'm trying to show my one daughter, Lainey, on, you know, reading. She was in kindergarten. She's going to first grade this coming September. And I'm trying to show her how I was taught on how to read. Now, meanwhile, my wife is a teacher, instructor / management over at a daycare. So she knows all this educational stuff, and she's looking at me,
Techniques and stuff.
she's shaking her head, and I'm like looking at her. I'm like, I'm getting frustrated, and she's looking at me and like, kind of like, and now I see her face. And I know I'm doing it completely wrong. So I'm like enunciating everything for her.
Cat.
Yeah, and she's looking at me and laughing. She's like, no, they're not gonna learn that way. So I kind of like fall back on the whole education thing, and I let her
like
take
the
it over.
formal education stuff.
Yeah, I let her take it over, and now they just went to Barnes and Nobles the other day, and Nova, my 2-year-old, picked out a book, and for the past couple of days she's been, Mom, read the book. Mom, read the book. So she wants my wife to read the book to her and all that. And Lainey picks out her books, and you know, they're not like educational, but I mean they are educational in a way, but they're like more fun for them, and just we want her to pick up our reading because our 11-year-old is just like a genius. Like she just reads the book. I'm looking at her. I'm like, Bella, you really read that chapter already? She's like, yeah. Why? I was like, it took you 5 minutes to read that chapter. She's like, I was like, so my trying to be, you know, the little smarty that I am. So I start questioning her. She's like, boom, boom, shutting me down. I'm like, all right, this girl knows. She's a quick reader and she understands everything. All right, well, that's good for her. So I kind of lay off on her, and she does her own thing. So she's good at school and all her stuff, and you know, I'm like hoping that the others follow suit with her. But yeah, Lainey is she's picking up on reading. You know, she knows how to, she'll see words and tries to pronounce them and try to read it herself and stuff like that. So I didn't realize how hard it was trying to teach a kid on reading until my wife was explaining it to me. I was like, all right, so
I'm out.
not my job. I'm done with that.
no,
Yeah.
Right.
I remember being like I think I was like 4 or 5 years old. We're coming from Uncle Ed's house. We're on New Falls Road. And we're coming up to what's now like a garage where they fix cars and stuff, like an auto body shop or whatever. To the left there, right across the street from Piazza's Bakery, there's like a garage or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, coming up before that is like a 7-Eleven.
Yes.
Coming up before that is a shopping center.
Right. There used to be a Rite Aid there. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I remember sitting in the back seat and then looking to the left, so we're going southbound on New Falls, and seeing signs and not being able. I saw letters, but I didn't understand. I wanted to read. That was the moment I was like, I have to learn how to read. Like, they were showing me books. They were trying to get me to read, but then I remember feeling helpless seeing that stuff. Like, one day I need to know if I need to go into that store. That's my thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can go into that store. I need to know what that store's for. What is that? What does that say? I remember being so frustrated. Could not wait to get home to like go through flashcards and stuff like that. I was like 4 or 5 years old. It's hilarious. But yeah, you're right. Because then I was eager to learn at that point.
Yeah.
That lasted a whole like week, but that was, after it got difficult. But That being said, though, how that little eagerness of a 5-year-old is now being adults. Is there something that you want to learn now that you think would be pretty cool? If money wasn't, like the education of this doesn't cost you anything, it's just something that you want to learn, you think would be like, like last week we were talking about musical instruments that we would like to learn or whatever. But outside of that, is there something you're like, man, I wish I had the knowledge of that, or you're going to, or something that you're approaching currently, or something that you think would be cool?
I would take apart a car, frame off restoration.
Yo,
Hands on, take it off, and just do it.
That's pretty cool.
That's what I was heading towards. Like, I would like to kind of be a mechanic, like learn how to work your own car. That way you don't, like you were saying, you
Taking
reading and
advantage
knowing it yourself instead of getting taken advantage of. Yeah.
I mean, our whole family, well, for the most part, we're very, heavily invested in the muscle car thing. And one of our dreams is to own muscle cars ourselves. It's costly if you don't know how to do certain things. So it's definitely a tool, and to know how to fix not even just old cars, but just cars in general. At least have a general understanding what's going on. For me, it's like I want to understand like real estate transactions to a point where I want to be an expert, or I don't care about the mogul thing. I don't care about eventually, because I know that stuff will come once you know that. But I think for me, I want to understand flipping houses, or just investing in property, like hotels, housing, whatever. I just think that stuff fascinates me, and I don't know. That's something that, and currently right now I'm studying like the stock market, how it operates, trading, all the stuff.
That stock market, boy, between the 401k and the stock market, man, lost. And you ask, here's the issue, man. You ask 90, and I'm going out on a limb here. You ask 90% of, let's just say, workers in general, and you're like, hey, I got this 401k, and then you call the company. So I've called the company multiple times, said, hey, what do I invest in? Hey, I'm not allowed to tell you. I'm like, what the hell am I giving you my money for? Because I don't understand it. I mean, I get it very, very vaguely, but that's one of those things where I think they do it on purpose to make you, like, you're just completely lost.
Giving your money away.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, you don't know, but to learn that, like a car is one thing. You can learn tire, engine, whatever, all the basics.
Right,
but to learn how to invest, forget about it. Just to have a base knowledge of it, you're talking hours upon hours of just researching, understanding. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was just telling these guys, I've been studying for like 4 months now, and it's still like I'm a baby. Like, I'm still like, oh my gosh, absolutely. Like there's so much to learn. There's so much. There's information, but my frustration started kind of like when I was 5 with the reading, started with what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
Something happened to me and I didn't understand how it worked, and it frustrated the crap out of me. I said, you know what? I'm going to learn how this operates because of that. Or let's just say your heater goes and they're telling you to replace the whole heater, but if you're knowledgeable, it might have just been 1 or 2 parts, cost you a couple $100 instead of $8,000 or $10,000 to replace a whole heater or whole heating unit. Right. It's one of those things where I want to prevent certain things from happening, and then also I want to gain a knowledge and also be profitable in what I am learning. Right. So I am currently applying what I'm learning and continue to to study. Right here you see there's day trading for dummies. Down there idiots. Apparently I'm an idiot, so all the books have are you're an idiot trading, day trading for dummies, whatever. But those are just a couple of the books. There's a couple of programs that I joined. There's forums. I was literally just talking about this outside these guys. But that's something I'm learning currently right now. And then once I kind of get my thing for that, I want to understand how to read charts. I want to understand where they're getting their information from, how they know when the next boom's going to be. I want to know that stuff.
Here's just an easy an example for me for the stock trading thing, and why it's important to have like a base knowledge to take advantage of this. I was 23 years old. I started investing. This was during 2008. So the stock went down, right? And the particular stock that we were looking to invest in, or I was looking to put my money into, split. Well, split to me scared the hell out of me. I'm like, oh, split. So, I mean, a very general explanation is, so the stock went from $80 and split to $40. And I'll never forget, The old man, 60-some years old, was like, oh, I'm doubling down. As the economy was going down, he had enough foresight to know and had enough life experiences to say, he's like, it's going to come back around, kid. Double down. Meanwhile, I had no idea what that meant. So he was just buying up stocks. And I didn't. I bought what I could and just let it split and say, or whatever.
I think that's called a reverse split.
Yeah. So you go in and you can buy. You just go in, or it just splits, I guess, to get some an infusion of cash flow or
Right.
people interested in your stock. Right now, it sold, I think at the time it was selling at $40. He doubled down. It is now currently selling $300+ a share.
Wow.
So
Sheesh.
he knew what it was in 2008, and obviously there's boom bust cycles and everything. But then I wish I would have known what the split meant.
Right.
I didn't know. I was just like, oh, my money's gone.
Right.
I didn't know. Meanwhile, I should have been investing in that.
Right.
So I lost thousands upon thousands of dollars just in that term alone because I had no idea what it meant at the time. So
Yeah.
that was the kind of the times like, man, they completely took advantage of me.
Yeah, and that I'm the same way where something happened and I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. It led to frustration. And like I said, I am applying, what I'm learning. And if it doesn't take off, it doesn't take off. But I satisfied something in my mind. You know what I'm saying? At least I tried to understand it. And if it's out of my league, then I'm okay with that.
Right.
It's not that I'm just continue to lead this, life of ignorance.
Yeah,
Where I'm
exactly.
just like keep getting rolled on and I'm not understanding what's happening. So same thing when it comes to car buying or real estate buying or understanding certain investments. This is just for me. That fascinates me. So to at least, I want to get the base understanding, yes, but if it keeps piquing interest, I'm gonna keep diving, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna keep going. So yeah, I got burned too before, years ago. So I'm not new. It's just that kept bothering me. So now I'm to the point where it's, I have a gap in time between now and like September. Well, this was like in the beginning of year to September. Just study the stock market. Try to understand as much as you can, because then I start, like my master's program and stuff like that. So my time with studying is limited. So I want to learn as much as possible within that time frame, which I got a good understanding, but there's a lot to be learned.
Well, actually, actually, kind of to your point, like earlier. I mean, you said like when you were younger, you got like frustrated and all that stuff. Like when I was like younger, maybe like pre-teens, whatever. I mean, it was like those little Tiger like video game things you used to like play.
Yeah.
It was like those like single use things like
Street Fighters on there.
yeah, it had like it was like extremely like dumbed down versions of like arcade games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That like I had one of those and like it just stopped working. Like batteries didn't do anything and I was like frustrated. I was like I didn't understand why it stopped working. So like that's why I got like a little tiny screwdriver, opened it up. I was like I fitted around, which was kind of like little bits and pieces of that, minus like playing video games stuff like that, kind of brought me I guess to the realm I have now, because that constant like curiosity of like why is certain electronics working and
Right.
type thing. So that kind of led me in certain realms and kind of like pushes you forward, kind of finds you stuff that you do like and you get more interested and get more educated on it. Kind of like, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. You guys remember the little steering wheel thing with the stick shift, and when you put the little stick shift, the little plastic stick shift in drive, a light turned on and it was like this little tiny red car. So then you're steering this little tiny red car and there's like this little film inside spinning.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I did not understand what that was. I'm explaining it now because I literally ripped mine apart.
Yeah.
And, okay, I understand how it works now, and started crying because I couldn't put it back together. I broke it. But it was funny you just said that. I wanted to know, how is this working? How does it know when I want to turn? Like, and to think about what it is now, it's so archaic. That thing, what it was, there's literally just a little tiny light bulb in there with like, it's a
just
film just
rotating.
going, and you're steering this little plastic
It's
thing
like
that's
a
attached.
treadmill type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
And I'm thinking, I'm like, man, this road is forever. Yeah. Like you're 4 years, 5 years old, the concept wasn't there. But when I took it apart, I'm like, this road's only a foot long, and I've been driving all night. You know what I mean? But yeah, so, all right, cool. So how we like to wrap up our episodes is with quotes, and today we have two by Charles Spurgeon and Plato. So the first one is, wisdom is the right use of knowledge. To know is not to be wise. Many men know a great deal, and are all the greater fools for it. There is no fool so great a fool as knowing a fool. But to know how to use knowledge is to have wisdom. I'm going to read that again because that is so dope. It's basically what I was saying, applied knowledge. Wisdom is the right use of knowledge. To know is to not be wise. is not to be wise. Many men know a great deal and are all the greater fools for it. That's because they're not applying. There is no fool so great a fool as a knowing fool. But to know how to use knowledge is to have great wisdom. Charles Spurgeon. If you just keep hitting play on that, and I know that sounds very confusing, but if you kind of analyze that, it's kind of what I was talking about before with applied knowledge. Basically, to have all this knowledge and not to apply it, you're the greater fool than the person who is a fool and knows nothing, right? Yeah, because you have a bunch of useless knowledge up there that you're not applying. Anyway, so the last quote is Plato: "A good decision is based on knowledge and not on numbers." All right, so that wraps up this episode number 18. Knowledge is power. In this episode, we discuss my experience with personal development, the power of applied knowledge, educating our children, education during our upbringing, and the things we want to be educated on. And we wrapped up this episode with quotes from Charles Spurgeon and Plato. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.